student, and he will be selecting a koan, which is already selected for everyone to study, and we will make some resources available for that. You can go online and find anything these days, of course. But in his last Sunday here will be the 25th. He will do what is called Hossen Shiki. It means something like an extended Dharma combat. Matsuoka Roshi used to say it's like in Kung Fu, the movie, the television show, where they're throwing spears at the guy and he's warding off all the spears one after the other. So Angan will be sitting here in a formal setting, and the people here will ask questions. We'll go around the room concerning this koan, and Angan will have to answer those questions. Chances are this is a blend of Rinzai and Soto Zen. Soto doesn't, our form of Zen doesn't emphasize the koan that much. But in this case, it's as if he's passing the koan by answering your questions. So those of you online will ask to also participate. And assuming that Fusatsu is here, she will coordinate the sequencing of the questions. I ask the last question as part of the formal thing. So we'll go over that on the 25th for you so you understand the procedure a little better. Did you want to say anything about attendance here? We have more people here, but we're not open.
Right.
Did you want to make that
so
point?
as long as folks have had their shot, members that are consistent givers, or they know a member of the board have been able to have their shots, and we can show up and have in person. We will have an updated policies online, so please check out the updates at asdc.org.
So we're not officially open. But
Yes. Without further ado, Ungen, I'm going to go ahead and hand the virtual ball over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Angan, by the way, is practice leader in Jacksonville, Florida. So there, any of you who are near Jacksonville, Florida, there's a group meeting there Monday nights.
Monday nights, yes.
Monday nights. So, welcome, Angan.
Thank you, and welcome everybody. Do we not have anybody online, or?
Yeah, we do actually.
See 4 so far.
Oh, my sight. Hi, another welcome for the 4th of July. We all like to celebrate our freedom and spend a moment to think a little bit about all the people that have given their lives, all the men and women over the centuries now. We should be very thankful to all of them. But today we're going to talk about something that's even perhaps a little more personal and deeper into your personal freedom. And this is a work by Dogen Zenji called Zazenshin, or the Acupuncture Needle of Zazen. What I'd like to do today, I'm going to read this thing through. It's very short. I'll read it through, and then we will go through it line by line. And I would like to encourage everybody to participate after each line, and we can make this more of a discussion than a lecture. Otherwise, I could read it very quickly and shake my robes and leave, and we could all go home. So please participate. Zazenshin, the essential function of Buddhas and functioning essence of ancestors, being actualized within non-thinking, being manifested within non-interacting. Being actualized within non-thinking, the actualization is by nature intimate. Being manifested within non-interacting, the manifestation itself verification. The actualization that is by nature intimate never has defilement. The manifestation that is by nature verification never has distinction between absolute and relative. The intimacy without defilement is dropping off without relying on anything. Verification beyond distinction between absolute and relative is making effort without aiming at it. The water is clear to the earth. A fish is swimming like a fish. The sky is vast and extends to the heavens. A bird is flying like a bird.
Now, let me stop you for a minute. Did you mean for us to chant with you after that?
No.
Okay, we're going to do that. We're going to do that later.
If you like, we can. I don't know my schedule.
What I'd ask for the people here present, if someone can hand out the yellow book. The yellow book has Zazenshin in it. The home practice manual.
We can end up with it if you like. That would be a good way to end up.
Yeah.
And to Dogen Zenji's version of the Zazenshin, I've taken the liberty to add a little personal note. The earth is solid to its core. A person is sitting in Zazen like a person.
Can you explain Zazen for the sake of newcomers, what the word means?
Please. As an introduction, I'd like to talk a little bit about meditation in general, and then we'll get to the specifics of Zazenshin. So what is meditation? Zazen is meditation. Shikantaza is the specific type of meditation that we focus on in Soto Zen. But meditation itself is a very broad word. There's all kinds of meditation. Christian meditation, Islamic meditation, mindfulness, centering, stress reduction, and Buddhist meditation. But if we narrow down the Buddhist meditation, it generally involves sitting to awaken to our original self and to the impermanence of life, the unsatisfactory nature of life, and to our delusions. If we narrow Buddhist meditation down now to our two branches of Zen, Soto and Rinzai, Soto focuses on shikantaza, that is just sitting. We'll talk about this more in detail later, but there's nothing, just sitting, watching your mind, watching your thoughts come and go. Whereas the Rinzai people focus more on koans. These are these impossible little sayings that you deal with to try to break through your intellectual mind to this realization that is beyond the intellect. In preparing for this talk, excuse me, I did find that today there seems to be a pretty distinct difference drawn between koan and shikantaza. But historically, this has not been true. My original teacher, Edo Roshi, said that koan practice is nothing but preparing to do shikantaza. And there were several other people that made the same ideas. Yasutani Roshi and also took that point of view. It was said that Baso took the best of both and combined them into his particular form of meditation. So there's nothing cut and dried about the difference. Some of the famous people of the past that have talked about meditation, of course, we talk about the Buddha to start with. In the Satipatthana Sutra, or the Sutra on breath or body parts, the Buddha supposedly said, bear attention on what is sensed. There must be just what is sensed. I think this is talking about being beyond your ego, just experience it directly. Bodhidharma, his nickname was the wall-gazing Brahmin. Dogen himself focused on, I really like it when he says thinking, non-thinking. Matsuoka Roshi, our Dharma grandfather, Hojo's Dharma father, said that meditation is all about posture, breath, and attention. Ikkyu, famous Zen master of the past said it's all about attention, attention, attention. His student got frustrated with hearing that and says, "What the hell is attention?" Ikkyu said, "Attention." Hojo continues to tell us that if we just sit still long enough and still enough, that the mind will follow the body. My favorite, though, of all these is Shunryu Suzuki's little saying that if you keep your front door of your mind open for thoughts to enter and the back door of your mind to let the thoughts go out, just don't invite them for tea. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about what meditation is, what it is not. The type meditation we do is not for resting. If you want to rest, perhaps you should go to bed or get on the couch. We practice focus on shikantaza, and we don't do it for thinking. We try to just let the thoughts come and go. We don't do it to kill time. So much meditation, I'm afraid, is people putting in their hours, saying, I've got my time in. And that's not what it's supposed to be about. Masu, or Baso, his master's name was Nangaku in Japanese. He was sitting one day in meditation, and his teacher came by and asked Baso, said, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, I'm meditating to become a Buddha." And so Nangaku picked up 2 stones and started rubbing them together. And Baso says, "Well, what are you doing, Master?" And he says, "I'm polishing these stones to make a mirror." That's a little koan. What did he mean? He meant that meditation itself is not going to lead you to becoming a Buddha. Meditation is just a technique. It's something that helps. But becoming a Buddha, awakening, comes from inside you, not from sitting, not from polishing stones. Okay, any questions to this point or observations?
Again, folks online, if you got comments or questions and it goes to folks on Facebook, please either throw it in the comments or just come off mute. I think we're good so far, Ungen.
Okay, moving right along. Let's now start the dissection of the Zazenshin. Line 1, the essential function of Buddhas and the functioning essence of ancestors. Essential is defined as being absolutely necessary, extremely important. A function is an activity, natural to or intended for. So the Buddhas, my definition of a Buddha is people that have awakened at least to some degree. You know, this is originally called enlightenment, which I think leads to too great of expectations. And then it became awakening. And nowadays there's even a trend to call what we used to call enlightenment or awakening insight, developing deep insight into these truths of life, the impermanence, non-self, and unsatisfactory neighbor. Essence is a property needed to exist, to be what it is, an indispensable quality. In our ancestors, again, my definition would be ancestors still live through their teachings. I'm not sure how Dogen thought about ancestors. He might have thought that they actually still existed in some form. But within Zazen, the essential functioning is Zazen itself. It's not doctrine, it's not study, it's not philosophy, it's in the doing, transmitting the practice of Zazen. Dogen called it self-fulfilling samadhi. So that was line one. Any comments or questions?
Again, and this is Fusatsu asking, two, there seems to be, because when people start to initially sit, it's almost like, we're trying to get something. And, even you talked about the wisdom that naturally arises from actually sitting, but it's not an aspiration that you try to sit for the wisdom, right? Can you speak a little bit about, wisdom as it arises from sitting versus the wanting to get something out of sitting?
Oh, yeah, us being human beings, and particularly I think American human beings, everything has to have a goal. We don't do anything for no reason. We got to have a goal. You're taught that from when you're a child. What are you going to be when you grow up? And I believe even for beginning Buddhist students, as a convenient means to encourage them, I don't discourage my students from saying, yes, I'm doing this so I can get enlightenment. Well, after they've been a while long enough, then you try to get them to really understand that enlightenment's not something out there that you get. It's something that's already in here that you can uncover. If you can look through your delusions and realize these truths of life, that's what it's all about, not setting up this goal and saying, I'm going to, I'll get my 10,000 hours in. When I first started sitting, after a while, I said, well, I'm going to try this stuff for 5 years. And if I hadn't reached this great enlightenment, I'm going to try something different. Well, after a couple of years, you figure out that's not a very good way to approach things anyway. Is that a good enough answer for you?
Yes, thanks, Sensei. And let me pause to see, is there any questions, comments?
Okay, moving right along. The essential function of Buddhas and the functioning essence of ancestors, second line, being actualized within non-thinking. Actualized means to make something real. Dogen focused on non-thinking. It's neither thinking nor not thinking. It's sort of the middle path between. Thinking is when you grasp, thinking about something, you grasp hold of it, you analyze it. Non-thinking, not thinking, I don't know how you not think. You can be asleep, I guess, or be drugged or dead, but our minds are thinking machines, and it's impossible to turn them off. We find that even in our deepest meditation. We call it monkey mind. And so what we try to do is just let these thoughts come and go without attaching to them. Dogen called it self-fulfilling samadhi. Samadhi is reaching a deeper state of meditation, and that once you experience that it speaks for itself, sort of. But that's one of the wonderful things about Buddhism, as opposed to some other religious type things, is we pretty much base our programs, our beliefs on experience and observation, not on what some preacher has told us or what some book says. So being actualized within non-thinking. Questions or comments?
Again, folks, if you have questions, comments, please come off of mute or put your comments in chat, and online in the room. Just start talking.
We got a question from the peanut gallery here.
With the phrase self-fulfilling samadhi in itself, what is that self referring to?
Self-fulfilling samadhi, it's when you experience something for yourself. When you experience this samadhi, this deeper state of meditation, of wisdom, whatever, it's self-fulfilling. You know it's real now. It's not something that's theoretical that you've read about. It's self-fulfilling. By doing it, you get to understand that it's real.
Thank you for your teaching.
You're welcome. Being manifested within non-interacting. Manifested, demonstrating in one's acts, whatever it is that you're talking about. Manifested within non-interacting. Non-interacting, my definition of that is it's you alone on your cushion doing your meditation. You're not interacting with other people. You're, of course, interacting with your own mind. But the manifestation itself, really needs to get beyond your thought, beyond your intellect. The manifestation is just you in Zazen on your zafu or cushion. You can't make it happen. It just happens. It's something that's beyond our intellect. Why do we focus so much on meditation as opposed to listening to lectures like this or reading books? Those are all good. Books and lectures are wonderful if it motivates you to sit. But I think experience has shown us that just using our intellect, reading books, doesn't do much more than entertain us. Otherwise, we could read a book and we'd all be awakened, enlightened, or whatever you want to call it, or you hear enough lectures. And unfortunately, I think a lot of other religions are sort of like that. If you go to hear the preacher regularly and you're going to be okay. But we say, no, that's not enough. You need to read, you need to study, but you also need to sit by yourself in silent meditation and let all this stuff sink in without thinking about it, or whatever happens when you're sitting. Questions or comments to?
I remember preparing for one of our community discussions. Reading something that Congo Roshi said about what other people's writings were about, or essentially their own experiences. They're sharing their experiences with you, but the only way that you can really have direct experience with those things that they're talking about is to actually, be in Zazen and to actually have those experiences because they become real to you. So that sounds like similar to what you're saying, Ungen.
Very much so. It's a great point.
Just a quick explanation. Congo Roshi was my senior Darban brother in Chicago, and we have access to his talks. It's available online, tape recorded, as well as written. Congo means diamond, and he published a little book called The Diamond Sword. And he would say, read your own book. Read your own book.
Yeah. He seemed to be very colorful in the way he expressed that. So if y'all ever have an opportunity to read some of it, it's very interesting.
He was a jazz pianist, and he talked. It was like a riff. It was like a jazz riff. He would just go on forever.
Super good, Ungen. So far, so good.
Okay. Being actualized within non-thinking, the actualization is by nature intimate, private, personal. So intimate you can't really share it. Again, it's you alone on your zafu doing it by yourself. Being manifested within non-interacting, the manifestation is itself verification. Verification is establishing the truth. Again, back to the idea of self-fulfilling samadhi. Again, doing it, the experience manifests itself. The actualization that is by nature intimate never has defilement. What is defilement? I'll thank Hojo for his observation on this. It's not the traditional definition of something that's messed up. The traditional definition is to mar or spoil or desecrate. But here we're talking about defilement is you can't get your ego mind and its delusions involved. If you've got your ego in this and your delusions, then that's we're talking about that as defilement, not the traditional definition. Comments, questions?
Now, another interpretation of defilement is it cannot be reduced to ordinary understanding. And so it's not a moralistic defilement, it's more like confusion.
Hojo Sensei, when you say ordinary understanding, can you speak a little bit more about that?
Well, you can talk about it with words and you can point at it, but you can't really capture it in words. You know, many things we can kind of, I understand how to drive a car, right? I don't know the meaning of it. The meaning is worldwide pollution, right? There are many things we understand, and there are things that have deep meaning that we don't understand, and like having a child. So somebody said Zen is the pursuit of the understanding of meaning, which sounds circular, but when you look at it, it's not really. And so ordinary understanding would be the kind of understanding we can gain by reading books, and we can learn how to drive a car, and we can learn how to do math, and we can physics and medicine and so forth. And we're very good at that. That's all monkey business too. But it's the upside, you might say, of the monkey mind. But when it comes to this, you're sitting facing a blank wall. There's not anything for the monkey to do. And so you have to go deeper to an intuitive level, maybe, would be a way to think of it. For it to have a realization, to have a direct realization of something that isn't even something, but it cannot be translated into words. So all of our efforts in all the books you read, this talk that Ongan is giving, these are efforts to help clarify your approach to it, not to try to explain it so that you understand it. That's not possible. Even Buddha did not understand this.
Any other questions or comments?
Moving right along. The manifestation that is by nature verification never has distinction between absolute and relative. Absolute, by definition, it means not qualified or diminished in any way, independent of all else, whereas relative is only in comparison with something else, not absolute. I like one of my favorite things in studying is the ocean and waves metaphor. The ocean is the totality of reality, whatever that is, Buddha nature, whatever you want to call it. And the waves are where we live. We're up in these waves that come and go, so when you start talking about absolute and relative, everything up in the waves are relative. They keep changing. They are big compared to other waves, whatever. Whereas ocean itself is absolute. As Hojo just said, this is stuff that gets beyond the intellect, I think mankind from as far as back as we can go, been trying to figure out what the ultimate reality is. Who are we? Why are we here? What are we doing? There's never been a good answer to that. There's been a lot of books written about it and a lot of lectures, but I've yet to see one that I thought was really on the nose. We're not denying the reality of both the absolute and relative. But it's back to that ocean and waves that both are real, whatever that means. And we call it, instead of saying they're all one, it's prefer to say they're not two. And that's just a neat way of saying we don't really know what the ultimate reality is. Surely there's some questions about absolute and relative existence. I must be doing an excellent job, Hojo. Okay, moving right along. The intimacy without defilement is dropping off without relying on anything. Here, I think when in the introduction we were talking about the 4th of July and freedom, but here we're talking about yourself deep inside. The intimacy without defilement is dropping off without relying on anything. Emptiness. Joe Dogen's teacher said, dropping away of body and mind. Dogen said this is awakening, dropping away of body and mind. That is freedom. If you're no longer entangled in the monkey mind world or in your ego, you're now free. Or as that great theoretician Janis Joplin said, freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. That's one of my favorites also. Anyway, intimacy without defilements, dropping off without relying on anything. Remember, this whole thing's about when you're sitting in Zazen. This is not when you're going to work. But when you're in Zazen, and if you sit still enough for long enough, body and mind drops away and you're free. Verification beyond distinction between absolute and relative is making effort without aiming at it. This is sort of ties in with not relying on anything. It's making effort without aiming at it. And again, during Zazen, going beyond the ego that aims and grasps at things. So we're making this effort to sit and let thoughts come and go, or let emotions arise and fall, to let feelings, pain, or whatever come and go. But we don't want to grasp onto those things. We don't want to aim at it. This goes back to your question about trying to grasp at something. Questions? We got another question back here. Thank you, Taylor. I better wait and see what the question is, Don.
I'm interested when we're talking about in Dogen's writing, the dropping off of body and mind, and other synonymous phrases. The phrase at the beginning of that reading you just read is the intimacy, and that's a very interesting word to me. Why the word intimacy keeps coming up in these conversations. Why do you think, in English at least, we have chosen this word intimacy for this experience?
I'm also hearing impaired, folks. So could you repeat that a little clearer?
I'm interested in why, in Dogen's writings and adjacent to Dogen's writings, when we're talking about dropping off of body and mind and Zazen experiences, etc., why the phrase intimacy comes up over and over again in the English language. Why do you think intimacy specifically?
Well, earlier we talked about intimacy as you're being intimate with yourself. Your Zabaton, Zafu, being very intimate with yourself, not with anybody else. So if you're doing Zazen and being intimate with yourself, and you sit still enough and long enough that you're no longer grasping at this idea of yourself, that's the dropping away of body and mind. You're just not aware of your body. You're still there, but you sit still enough, long enough, and finally they can drop away, at least briefly. My experience has been is when that happens, it's not very long till your brain says, "Oh God, this is great, I'm getting it," and you just screw the whole thing up because your mind started working again. But once you've had that experience, you know it's real. You know it exists. It's a self-fulfilling samadhi again. So I live very close to the ocean. I don't have to go down there every day to prove the ocean's there. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I know it's there. The same thing with these dropping off of body and mind. I've sat still enough, long enough, I've experienced that in short little bursts. So,
Yeah,
I'll just one.
I think Master Dogen elsewhere uses analogies to fish and birds, fish swimming in water and birds flying through the sky and so forth. So I think we talk about sharing our most intimate thoughts, with others and our most intimate feelings and experiences. But the metaphor, the analogy of the fish to the water, where the fish is in the water, but the fish cannot know that it's in the water. Maybe flying fish do because they jump out of the water. But it's that kind of closeness, not only in space, but also in time. So that when we become intimate in this sense, it is so intimate that it can't be shared with anybody, even if you try. And all of the writing is trying to share and trying to share the Dharma assets, trying to help other people come to this same kind of experience themselves, but it simply cannot be done. And so the most you can say about it is that it is intimacy without defilement. That is, it cannot be reduced to understanding, but you know it for sure. As Ungan is saying, you know for sure, but you can't share it with somebody else. They can get to it themselves, and in that way it's shared.
Thank you both for your teaching.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
No, but I do have a comment because you mentioned that, and this is Fusatz again. You mentioned that it's not like going to work, but one thing that I found interesting as I started practicing is a sense of relief because you talked about dropping off of body and mind. It's exhausting looking at everything through a lens, and everything you look at, your mind is making up things about the thing. Like, oh, Pat, her hair's nice. Oh, Ryan, she's here. She's new. I mean, it's like your mind is constantly just running amok. So when you see the difference in trying to see things as they really are, I mean, I was just like, oh, it's a relief. It can be done, but it's just the crazy mind just keeps on going and on. Can you speak a little bit about, because I know you've been practicing for years, did you notice that too when you started to recognize that your mind was just constantly just rolling on? Like did you notice that about your mind when you that you were thinking about things, even the color? Oh, that's red. You can't even look at the sky without making some conclusions about it. I mean, do you have any comments or?
Oh yeah, I don't know where to start. Yeah, well, you just can't walk around all day being totally aware of everything that's happening. You just can't do it. I don't think. Maybe you can, but I sure can't. And as far as going to work, I said this: you can't take this to work. Well, let me back up a little bit on that. Surely, the most important thing about this whole thing of meditation and Buddhism and Zen is how it affects your daily life. The compassion that you develop for people, the actions you take. If you think it's just you can come to the Zendo and sit and do your meditation, you say, oh, that's over now, I can go out and go to work. That's not what I'm talking about at all. Okay. Without that final step, if you remember the 10 ox herding pictures, you come back into reality. Right. But now what reality is for any individual, I can't tell you. That's in your own head. But I would suggest that if you're working and you're really getting your monkey mind, that you take a little short break and go hide somewhere and even pretend you got to go to the bathroom and go sit in there and calm down a little and recenter yourself or think a little non-thinking and then go back out.
Thank you for your teaching.
Okay, the water is clear to the earth. A fish is swimming like a fish. A fish is just in its own element, here and now, doing its own thing. Just like meditation is being in our own element on earth, doing our own thing. The sky is vast and extends to the heavens. A bird is flying like a bird. Same comments. The bird's doing its thing in its own element now. And I have made up my own little third addition to that says the earth is solid and extends to its core. A person is doing zazen like a person.
Nice.
So what is your own element? If you're sitting in zazen and all your monkey mind has flown away and body and mind drops off, that's who you really are. You're not all the monkey mind adjectives you can think of, not your ultimate, not your true self. And with that, I will ask for any final questions or comments.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. Just hold it. Yeah, that's right.
I get stuck right now on the word verification. So while you're sitting still for a long time, how do you know how do you understand verification?
I don't have an answer for that. I think that's something that each individual has to experience for themselves. I can tell you about mine, but that's mine. You got to do your own. You sit still enough, long enough for Hojo, and see what happens, and you verify it for yourself. Now, if you got a good teacher, I guess you can go talk to the teacher, go to Dokusan and explain to him what's happened. But I don't think he can, that's in your own head. And we can talk about it, but the ultimate truth is that's up to you to verify for yourself. What does verify mean to you?
I know Hojo Sensei had a comment on that too.
Yeah, I think the reason Dogen used that term in relation to manifestation, these are English choices that the translator's making, but whatever the original were, if you read enough Dogen's work, you kind of hear how he thinks, and the words he uses. So verification would be understood, Nyojo's verifying him that night when body-mind dropped off and they had that conversation. And he said, don't affirm me too quickly, affirm or verify. So we have this idea of formal verification. Angan is going through formal training. You become a black robe priest, you become a brown robe priest. The notion is you have been verified by your teacher. But what Dogen is saying here is verification doesn't come from your teacher. Verification of your practice and of this teaching, the truth of it comes from your experience. And once you have that verification, you don't really need verification from anybody else. Your authority comes from your experience. But if you have a teacher, then chances are they're going to be able to recognize that. And so the formal verification is just like a wedding or a funeral. It's just a ceremony marking something that's already true. And we suspect that there are thousands and thousands of unverified awakened people in history, simply lost to history.
Do you think too, and this is to Pat, like, what do you do, like sewing is a perfect example for you, because Pat is a master sewer, weaver, etc. So yeah, I'm just saying that.
Fabric artist.
Yes,
Weaving artist.
Yes, he's a fabric artist. But for me, I know, like, in this teaching, like, the time that we've been in the midst in the past year has allowed me to really lean back into the teachings related to like impermanence or things that I'm seeing that I'm actually seeing and experiencing myself. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, there it is again. That's no impermanence. So I mean, for me, it's interesting how I go back and I look at it for myself. Is this true for me? Do you kind of experience it that way too when you're like when you've read something or like when you've studied with other sewers or fabric artists, like coming back and actually doing the practice? How does that work in your own experience? How do you,
Yeah, I often feel like I'm just receiving something, and maybe that is a certain kind of verification. There's no words to describe the receiving, so to speak. So, so that happens, and I've often wondered if, actually, in my making of things, I get into some kind of zone, and is that it? Well, so yeah, and I believe that feeling has brought me to studying Buddhism.
yeah, I always like to ask artists too because it's like y'all are constantly creating things, and like I've watched y'all either like musicians or artists when they're in the zone. I would love to watch you weave and things and see if you're going because you can tell it's like they're not there anymore. They're totally immersed in the
For hours.
Yeah, that's why we think Zazen and Zen meditation is the heart of creativity, because you're immersed in a medium, just as you are if you're painting or doing music, but the medium is your consciousness. The medium that you're examining or working with is your own consciousness.
Yep, and folks, again, online, if you would like to have a comment or a question about what Onion has said or just about your own personal experiences, let me make this bigger so Onion can see.
I can't read who's online.
Yeah, let me grab this. There we go. Make it bigger.
Oh, there you
So
go.
Alicia, Kaisak, Corolla, or John, any questions or comment, please, if you have anything, just turn the camera on or just not, or just come off of mute. Any comments or questions from online?
Crickets.
I must say I'm greatly disappointed that I don't have any of my Jacksonville folks online.
Well, make sure they know that they can go back and look at the recording and also be posted on Facebook too. So
Thank you.
Yeah, and let them know about the next 3 Sundays. Well, if we're going to close, I was going to suggest that Suki might want to lead us in the chant. Oh, we have one here.
we got to, Shinjin.
Yeah, just a comment that I want to make. Every time I read the Zazenshin, I'm struck by that last paragraph. Waters through the earth.
Shinjin, put that closer to you so they can hear what you're saying. There you go.
Fish is swimming like a fish. The sky is vast, extends the heavens. The bird is flying like a bird. You know, in modern times, it's almost impossible to tell what these animals symbolized in medieval Japan. But one thing that we can kind of rest assured is that at that time, you know, they saw animals as very separate from humans, and they saw animals as almost embedded in their environment as a function of their environment. This is what this animal does, and that's all this animal does. And you know, we don't see animals like that now. You know, we know that fish have memory, and that crows are more intelligent than most of the people we interact with on a daily basis. And you know, the whales have more complex brains than we do, and therefore probably more intelligent than we are, even though it's probably a very different kind of intelligence. But I think what he's saying here, and it's almost like an illumination of the first statement that the Buddha made when he was born. Pointed to the heavens, pointed to the ground, and said, "I alone save the world." And he didn't mean himself personally. What he, I think, was trying to say is that as humans, we have a capacity to be very, very different from all the world around us. And that capacity that we have is actualization. And the process that we're going to use to get there is Zazen. And as far as anybody can tell, you know, experts on animal behavior, we're probably have a deeper understanding than most animals of our own death and our own short time here. That they don't know that animals are cognizant of that in the same way that we are. But so I also see this as kind of an illumination of the last thing that the Buddha said. Be a light unto yourself. Your time is short. Don't spend your life in vain. Don't squander your life. So that's kind of how I've always interpreted the Zazenshin. It is almost an illumination of, how if there was bookends to the Buddha's teachings, I would see it as the first thing he said and the very last thing he said. We as humans have a different opportunity, and that opportunity is enlightenment and actualization. Because we can take on Zazen.
Thank you, Sensei.
I also wanted to ask our newcomer if you have something to say from the perspective of a newcomer. Calling you out here. Good.
And that's okay.
Yeah, don't let your first impression be your last.
I'll come back Wednesday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wednesday evening is newcomers. We have a little more time to discuss.
And again, just put it out for any of our folks online. Any comments or questions?
Well, what I was going to suggest is, Suki, if you don't mind leading us in the Zazenshin, and then after that, we would just do the 4 vows to close.
And
As you
before that, let me just do a quick kind of promo of what's happening in July here. So Ungen next Sunday will be doing his wayfinding talk. And that's how he basically got here. So we'll find out a lot about how he got to Zen. And then on the 18th, he's going to be doing the story of the ancestor Ikendashi. He's going to be doing the ancestor talk. And then Sensei Hojo talked about what's going on the 25th about the Shuso ceremony. And we're going to be able to have an opportunity to do a question and answer session with him about the writing that he talked about. Hojo Sensei, you have anything else to add on that?
No, just stay tuned. I thought if you did it from the Doan position, you'd have the drum and gong.
Just grab one of the mics. I think it's
Who should I rob?
Hojo Sensei is fine. And again, everyone, as always, those who celebrate the 4th of July, we are grateful for those, and just be safe and be well throughout the holiday. We do have our normal sessions of Tuesday Dharma study, Monday book club, and on Wednesday we have newcomers. And again, we appreciate all of those who are consistent contributors, and those who are not, we ask that you consider that, because again, it keeps us the lights on, our teacher fed, and us being able to offer these practice opportunities. Again, we're so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you for your practice and your presence. And then we're going to close with Suki's doing the chants for us. Thanks.
So if you happen to have a home practice manual, home junk, go online to our website and download it for free. The Zen practice at home has Zazenshin in it. We have a screen available. You can Google it. I'm pretty sure it's all that. Otherwise, just chant along with your ears more than your mouth. Otherwise, you chant it a little slowly. We chant this every Friday along with the vow. Morning sessions, every morning session here, 6 to 7 here. So we'll chant the Zazenshin, and then immediately we'll follow it with the 4 vows to close as usual. So you chant the title as usual.
Zazenshin, the essential function of Buddha of ancestors being actualized within non-thinking, being manifested within non-interacting, being actualized within non-thinking. The actualization is by nature intimate, being manifested within non-interacting. The manifestation is itself verification. The actualization that is by nature intimate never has defilement. The manifestation that is by nature verification never has distinction between absolute and relative. The intimacy without defilement is dropping off without relying on anything. Verification beyond distinction between absolute and relative is making effort without aiming at it. The water is clear to the earth. A fish is swimming like a fish. The sky is vast and extends to the heavens. A bird is flying like a bird. Closing verse. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it.
Gasho, everyone. Thank you so much. Be safe, be well, and continue to practice. Just keep sitting still enough, long enough. Have a great weekend.
Happy 4th of July.